And you're very welcome along. It's football. It is the two goons, Dave McIntyre and Nathan Murphy are here. How you doing? Oh, that didn't go down so well. Oh, that didn't go down well at all. That's they can see you now, McIntyre. We're streaming live.
An abrasive opening.
How are you?
It was unnecessary, wasn't it?
We're going to preview the World Cup final here because you haven't heard enough talked about the fact that France are going to beat Croatia on Sunday afternoon, while Kerry are dismantling Galway. But we've also picked Dave and Nathan's team of the World Cup. I'm just working it out here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You only got 5 out of the 11, Nathan. What's wrong with that?
Well, we just ended up working. He got the goalkeeper, so
we started from the back. I got the extra man.
We should have done 2 separate 11s because ultimately I don't agree with all yours. You won't agree with all mine.
So therein lies the beauty of it.
It means we're going to have like a zebra, a camel, a horse designed by committee here. Is that what it is?
Exactly.
We agreed on the formation.
4-4-2?
We took it. No, 4-3-3.
4-3-3.
Just so you got a bit of glamour. You want a third attacker in there, so we took it from there.
I'm surprised you two didn't pick a 5-4-1. You know, old school mid 90s.
Terry Venable's Christmas tree formation.
At least that had the sense of trying to attack. I'm thinking more of the that period of time when Brian Little was the Villa manager, and it was definitely
you're the only person who ever reminisces fondly about the time Brian Little was in charge of
5 defenders. But Liverpool had 5 defenders as well. Who were their 3 centre backs around that period, Nathan?
Around what year?
The guy they signed from Wimbledon for about 4 million.
Oh, John Scales.
Little guy, yeah, John Scales.
John Scales wasn't a little guy.
No, he wasn't.
He was pretty small.
He wasn't.
Ovid Leonardson.
No,
he was
Scales,
a midfielder.
Scales actually wasn't that big.
Mark Wright.
188. Okay, so he's a good bit bigger than Phil Bad there. All right, okay, what's 188? 188 metres in feet. What's that in old money? That is, he's only 6'1". It's pretty small for a defender. Let's move on.
You won't see Brian Little naked.
Topless. I didn't see him naked, I saw him topless. He has the same tattoo as David Beckham.
I knew there was a story behind it.
Yeah. I wish him well. He's ill at the moment, so I hope
hope he's...
Just to rain in your parade there, Nathan.
Oh,
who's your goalkeeper, Dave? Who did you pick?
It's okay.
Statistically, Courtois was the best of the 4 semi-finalists, but I've gone with Jordan Pickford.
A hometown decision, is that what you're doing?
Well, not quite. He's so young. He's had a really good tournament. I can't actually recall an error that he's made in the tournament. I think that he's only played for England 9 times is kind of incredible. And the save, possibly, it'll go down as the most underrated save in World Cup history because he'll get none of the credit for it because Colombia scored in the very next attack. The corner kick was headed in after he had put the ball out for that corner.
He gets credit because they win the game, I think.
Well, it was forgotten about.
I think I got a bit, and at the end of the tournament now, you're going to start seeing it like save of the tournament competitions.
Unbelievable.
Ahead of the curve here, I think.
Up there with any save I've ever seen.
It's pretty good.
It was magnificent.
He was getting grief early in the tournament about going with the wrong hand. I can't remember from who.
But David Priest, the go-to goalkeeping expert online, was suggesting actually there wasn't much technically wrong with what he was trying to do, that it was outfield players criticising a goalkeeper for not moving his feet in the right direction.
He also saved the penalty with his outside arm as well.
You need to remember as well that there was a lot of doubt about Pickford even a couple of months ago as to whether he would be the number 1. They didn't seem set in stone because of Joe Hart's dip in form. He was put up on Monday Night Football one night as not being commanding enough in the penalty area from corner kicks, that really he was sort of almost attracted to forwards and finding himself in a little bit of trouble where instead of just being the big strong man and pushing everybody out of the way, and there have been no real issues like that. The only one downside to Pickford's performances was probably that last 20 minutes against Croatia where they sort of stopped playing it out of the back and he just started going route one.
I don't know how much of that was his fault, though.
Maybe he had looked around
really
and
have
realised
the
everyone
options.
was wrecked.
Fullbacks and centre-backs weren't splitting like they were earlier in the game, or particularly in the first 20-25 minutes. Honourable mentions, Jared, go to Lloris has made a couple of brilliant stops. I don't know, might only be me, I'm never 100% convinced by Lloris for some reason. Can't quite put my finger on it. Not just France. Yeah, I think so. For Tottenham as well, Subasic has been brilliant. His penalty saving is top class. And obviously the Russian hero has got to get a mention as well. Like in 5, he had a couple of unbelievably good moments in the early stages, but when I had to go for it, I went for Pickford.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so we're going to go to you now, Nathan. You can pick the 2 centre backs, then we get the full backs.
Yeah, 2 centre backs. Well, one of them was easy. Varane is an automatic selection. He's probably the best centre back in the world right now.
He's a thoroughbred.
25. He's already got 48 caps. He has 4 Champions League titles. He is as good as it gets. He's quick. He has good movement. He is well able to read a situation. Now, he's helped that he has a good centre-back alongside him in Umtiti, but he looks like the senior guy. He looks like a guy who for the next 6-7 years is just going to get better and better. And even 2-3 years ago, there was talk of Manchester United been interested, Chelsea, Manchester
He was
City.
actually out of the team for a while. There was an opportunity.
And you were always looking at him thinking, there's no way in the world Real Madrid are ever going to sell this
There was definitely a period of time where they decided that you need a bit of, either you just need a kick up the ass or you're just not playing well enough to merit a place in the team at the moment. And he was out, and it was a long enough period. I remember talking
a little bit of a
dip
after the 20-21 years of age period where he was kind of this obvious one for the future. A little bit of a dip then, but last 2 years he's been up there with the best centre halves in Europe. Don't agree with your next one though.
My next one, it was tough. I was either going to go for Dejan Lovren or John Stones. I went with John Stones because if we were doing this on Monday, I may go for Lovren if he gets through the final without doing something mental.
Lovren-ish.
Which is always a possibility. He's right. He was saying after the semi-final, I don't get enough praise, I don't get enough respect. I'm
world class.
I'm world class. I'm one of the best centre halves in the world. And he's right. For 89 minutes of every game, he is. But there's always a moment. It's that cockiness, it's the moment of relaxation that you just can't have, where he's liable to just push somebody over when they're heading towards the end line needlessly and give away a penalty. So if he gets through Sunday, Lovren probably slides in there. I just think Stones was so important to the way England and Southgate
was good,
wanted to play.
But are you going to remember how good he was at the end of this World Cup, or are you going to remember a ball watching and a missed header? A couple of missed headers over the tournament where, because he showed us what he could do, there were other opportunities for him to continue doing that and be like one of the best defenders in the world who also scores goals from corner kicks.
Well, at half-time in the semi-final, I would have agreed with him in being in our team. But he, as you said, is key to the way England wanted to play. He's always had the belief and the confidence, even when he was under Martinez at Everton, to try and bring the ball out of defence, even when he was making those mistakes, even when Martinez dropped him from the team because he was under pressure from the Everton supporters to do so. And he just stopped doing that in the second half, as did all of them.
I think he was hung out to dry by his manager by leaving Jordan Henderson on his own in the middle of midfield. Much like Pickford, there were no options for him. There was nobody looking for the ball. Dele Alli and Jesse Lingard went missing. They were too far away. Whereas earlier in the tournament, and all right, it was against lesser teams, when they were playing it around inside their own penalty area and he was really taking the risks, everybody was dropping deeper. He wasn't having to send 50, 60-yard balls forward. He could actually pick out a nice pass. I still thought in a World Cup semi-final, there was 5 or 6 occasions where he just stopped dead and he told Dele Alli, pointed, you here. And instead of playing the simple ball to his right-hand side, he pinged it 20 yards straight down the middle and set them off an attack again and again. Maybe he does need a little bit of what Varane has, a bit more awareness, a bit more strength in his tackle. But for any team and for City going forward, I think he'll be back in that City starting team.
Who would you have instead? Lovren?
Probably.
I think
I also think Alderweireld and had a good tournament as well. And outside of them, Godin was brilliant until their second knockout game. And I always like Diego Godin, as I'll mention later when we get to the left back. But
Harry Maguire was excellent as well. From where he's come from, talking ahead of the semi-final, that probably the biggest game I've ever played ahead of this was a League One playoff final. To look that comfortable, to be that good on the ball, was quite surprising. Because to be honest, I got it wrong with England. I thought he should have picked Chris Smalling just because. If Chris Smalling, I felt, was playing for Leicester, people would say, what a centre-back, but he was being criticised because he was with United. But actually, Southgate said, I want guys who can pass the ball, who are comfortable with it at his feet. And Stones looked so comfortable at that level.
I think Stones gets some of the credit as well for the way that Maguire looked so comfortable with the ball at his feet. It almost like he inspired him to do that. And Southgate would be like, well, look
Maguire's
at
25.
what Stones is doing.
Like he's not a kid either. You know,
but he's a kid in experience terms.
Well,
he's playing for Hull in League in Championship like 18 months ago.
It's funny you say that, right? Because actually, I'm looking at the stats here, and he played 134 games for Sheffield United alone. So, like in the number of games, that's the value of games in those lower divisions. And it's interesting as well that he's picking a League One game is the biggest game I've played in. Okay, so it's a playoff final versus having played matches in the Premier League. Because you just assume that, that match is not as important. But in his head, those games, that knockout, that's hugely valuable. And I think that's the benefit of those players having played a lot of football. So I think Stones, you're right, definitely has the potential to go on to be like the best defender in the world, like a proper I don't know, maybe you can talk yourself into this not being the end of the road for this England team and not being the greatest opportunity they've ever had, when you do think that there is still significant room to improve.
He just needs to make sure that he doesn't become that he becomes an Nemanja Vidic in terms of his level of improvement the older he got, and doesn't become a Chris Smalling or a Phil Jones, where the older and the more experienced become, the worse defender you become.
I think that if Ferguson had stuck around, those two would be far better players than they are now. I think that the circumstance that he finds himself in with a coach who trusts him and who wants him to improve and who will scream at him to improve, will improve John Stones.
I think, on England, the problem for England will be, and when the introspection properly starts over the next few months and they look at Modric and they look at Kante, why aren't they developing midfielders who can control a game? And that's been a problem for, who was the last great English midfielder who could actually run a game? And even Scholes was a bit more attacking, in that it was always Gerrard, it was always Lampard. Someone who'll sit a bit deeper and do the right thing all the time, take a few risks when you want them to.
Yeah, but Gerrard and Lampard were just, they were bombing on trying to score goals. If you're good underage, you want to go and score goals, because that's what gets the attention, that's what gets everybody talking about it.
Why doesn't Luka Modric want to score goals?
Or Xavi, or Iniesta, or Alonso.
In that culture, they all knew that role was valued, I think. That it's a cultural shift where you're going to be happy to be the defender, the defensive midfielder who sets and dictates the pace of the game. But is that what the scouts are looking for in those amazing academies? Probably isn't. Right, so your fullbacks here. I mean, we've got a very England-heavy team so far. I'd just like to apologise on behalf of...
and we're not going to get any better in that regard.
The OTB geniuses so far. We've got Jordan Pickford, John Stones and Rafa Varane. 2/3 of our team at the moment is English. Dave?
Make that 3/4, Ger. I've got the two full-backs. I'm going to start right back. I think Thomas Meunier had a really good tournament, and Belgium really missed him in the semi-final against France, because he did a good job on Neymar, and no one really expected that he would. Pavard has been one of the finds of the tournament. I'd be amazed if he's still in Stuttgart in September. His goal was just phenomenal. That volley, maybe the greatest outside of the boot volley we've seen in a long, long time. And Vrsaljko was very good for Croatia as well, but for the same reason you were talking about Maguire, when you think of where he's come from. For me, Kieran Trippier has come from nowhere. And yet sounds a bit odd because he's playing for a Champions League club, but he was second fiddle to Kyle Walker for most of the last 2.5 years, up until Walker went to Manchester City. I love his aggression. Can't recall him making a mistake defensively in the tournament. Took complete responsibility for the set pieces. It was noticeable when he left the field against Croatia with that injury how the quality of their set piece deliveries just plummeted. The two balls that Rashford sent in were puke.
I know, but
awful.
Asking Rashford, so young, to be the person who's going to save your World Cup, it's like...
And then you bottle it by clipping it in. Whip the bloody ball in. It just needs to hit someone in the face and it might end up at the back of the net. So for me, right back, Kieran Trippier.
Yeah, hard to disagree. I think the commentary on Wednesday night was he's the best right back in the world right now. I still think Meunier is...
You weren't watching RT, so...
Is ahead of him, and back that up in this tournament as well. We've covered Tottenham a lot over the last couple of years, and particularly when you were at White Hart Lane. I loved watching Kyle Walker. He's 10 feet away from you at the pace. He fitted perfectly into what Pochettino wanted to do. Yet if you were beside Kenny Cunningham, he would say every single time, Trippier is a far better player. Trippier is far more talented. All right, Walker is the pace, but with the ball at his feet, Trippier's quality of delivery is far better. And for some reason, maybe he was biding his time, maybe he was trying to get him into his mindset. Pochettino waited and waited and waited until eventually Walker left. And I wonder if Kyle Walker hadn't decided to push through a move to Manchester City, would Kieran Trippier even be in this squad? Because it did seem as though Walker was Pochettino's guy that he wanted. But he's taken his chance and he's going to be the right back for England, you'd have to think now, for a long time to come.
Yeah, unless they go back to a flat back four, in which case Walker starts to push him again.
Well, then it's a proper decision that Tenka has to make, but I don't think he'll be looking at that anytime soon. The system worked just short of that Modric style player, which they just don't have at the moment.
I guess the other question with these English guys is we don't know how they react to this, because English players are so used to coming home and being slated.
Yeah.
Suddenly Kieran Trippier is left from being in a Spurs team of 11 players, he's probably the 11th when you think of world-class stars.
Yeah.
Suddenly now he's the guy everyone's going to be talking about, along with Harry Kane. And he has to deal with that. Does he take it on and go, yeah, maybe I want to be the best right back, maybe I can be that, or does it go to your head?
I think he has the right attitude. Kind of looks like a guy who's dragged himself up from nothing really and just loves every game that he's playing.
He was at the City
Academy.
Yeah, for 5 years from 07 to 2012 and played with Barnsley on loan. And then obviously Burnley was kind of where he made his main breakthrough. But he's only played 40 games for Spurs since 2015.
The first 2 seasons at Spurs, he got Europa League games. Essentially,
himself and Ben
what he was
Davies
stuck
were in the
doing.
same basket.
If
They
you
just
rested
stepped in
Rose and
for-
Walker,
exactly.
that's when they got in. But aside from that, they basically got nothing. But his quality delivery, he was right up there.
Class.
Lucas Hernandez is your left back.
Yeah, I love him. Although I have to say, because I mentioned Godin earlier, I pretty much love any defender that plays for Atletico Madrid. But the influence that the two Diego, Simeone and Godin have had on Lucas Hernandez, I still have to check myself when I see that he's 22. He's got so much more development in him. And I think he'll get better going forward, but rock solid defensively. Honourable mention for Jan Vertonghen, who I think had a really good tournament, and probably what is not his absolute best position at left back. But I think Hernandez in 3 or 4 years will be the best left back in the world.
Atletico Madrid, you could have had 3 other defenders
Yes,
in that
absolutely.
team. You could have had Vertialco, Lucas Hernandez and Godin.
Yeah.
So obviously everything they learn at club level they can bring to international level. Marcelo, maybe the injury held him back. I thought he was really
He
poor
just didn't
against
play enough
Belgium.
for me, and he was bad in that game.
The first couple of games in the group when they were cruising, I thought he was outstanding, but it's hard to look past Lucas Hernandez.
I thought Danny Rose looked great for the 20 minutes he was on the field. It's like, should he have seen a bit more game time over there?
Didn't play enough football over the last 6 months. If he'd been fully fit all season, there's no question he was.
He played well enough for you to think he would do a very good job for Manchester United if they were to sign him.
Well, I would think there's a very good chance that he will leave
He has to
Spurs.
leave.
Everything he has been saying while over there. How does he go back and face the medical team after implying that they were forcing him to take this and that and didn't care less about his mental well-being?
Yeah. Okay. So midfield, Dave. There's no arguments. Everybody says Luka
Well,
Modric.
go Nathan first. He's picked 2 of the 3 midfield players. So
Who did I pick?
You take it away.
I think we both agreed.
Yeah,
N'Golo
we knew
Kante
Modric had to
and
be in the
Luka
team.
Modric.
Modric and Kante are shoe-ins.
yeah.
So
Did they play together? They do.
I think
I think
so,
they. In
absolutely.
fact, it'd be.
It's a stupid question. I'm
It's
really only
Casemiro and Modric.
to string out this section of the show. Of
Kante
course they can play together because they're
replacing
brilliant
Casemiro.
footballers.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, the line that they had was that behind Pogba, Kante plays both sides of him. That he covers both positions, so he gives them a little bit more freedom. Still sort of feels as though we don't fully appreciate what Kante can do, even though he's won a title for Leicester, he's won a title for Chelsea.
Yeah, do you test the resolve of the new manager at Chelsea if you're anybody else in world football and go, you've got your own guys?
Well, they only paid 30-something
Yeah,
million.
it was a steal.
He's probably in a difficult position because everything coming out of Chelsea is that they may sell Courtois, they may sell Willian, they're going to sell Fabregas, they may sell Hazard, and they've already sold Matic. So surely they can't let Kante go as well. He never has a bad game.
No.
Sometimes he may not be as effectual when he has the ball.
What was his Premier League season like? In that Chelsea team, it was hard to kind of see who was actually playing well and performing. It seemed like everybody came off about 15-20%.
Yeah, well, when he and Matic played together in the first season, they were class. And last season, obviously, no Matic. And Kante also had a spell out of the team when he was injured, and they looked really weak when Fabregas is one of your 2 holding midfield players. The interesting thing about Kante is that we've no idea what kind of a bloke he is. Like, we've never heard him been interviewed. It's not like he agitated for the move from Leicester. It was the obvious move that some club was going to make. And I don't know, he just seems to be, mainly because we haven't heard from him, this real quietly
If you're Man
spoken-
United, you're looking at what's going on here with Pogba saying, Pogba plays pretty well. Ooh, did a bit of that. Is all we need to do is sign that guy, and he's already played really well with Matic. Suddenly my midfield trio, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I think Mourinho will have watched the semi-final and looked at Pogba and thought, like, here's a guy taking full responsibility for his defensive duties, not shirking anything at all, playing for the team, giving up all the flair aspects of his game. Now Jose has to be the man to get that out of him when he's wearing a United shirt. Like, he was playing centre half pretty much for the entire second half of the semi-final and did it well.
It's not going to happen.
So I also went with Blaise Matuidi, who was unbelievably good in the semi-final. He's only started 3 of the games, so I'm not sure if Deschamps was ever fully convinced, or maybe it's just when he feels that
31,
they
I
can
didn't realise
go
he
and
was
they
that
can really take it to a team. He doesn't need another strong presence in midfield, but he just never stops. So if you have him and Kante never ever stopping, he's probably more skillful than people give it credit for, and he's had one of these careers when you look back in it. He's played for a lot of good teams. He's had a lot of success throughout his career, and it was a strange one with midfielders because I didn't feel, aside from Kante and Modric, there were a huge amount of contenders of the teams in the latter stages.
Yeah.
Rakitic. I thought Axel Witsel had a very good tournament, even though I never thought ahead of the tournament that he was particularly good with the ball at his feet, but actually looked very comfortable. Philippe Coutinho was brilliant for Brazil at the start of the tournament, but then didn't do a huge amount against Belgium when they were knocked out. So I think Matuidi, on the basis that he had a good tournament and then was so bloody good against Belgium, gets in.
He's just got an unbelievable engine. I couldn't understand, I know he did some injury issues last season, why Sami Khedira was getting into the Juventus team ahead of him. He was on the bench for the big Champions League games. Just didn't understand that, because he is class.
The other obvious one, actually, I'm sure people will go, Kevin De Bruyne. Could have been in
Yeah.
there.
And he very much was a midfield player this time around, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I thought he had flashes.
Yeah. I don't feel like they got the best out of him over the course of the tournament. It's like, I mean, he obviously had been complaining pre-tournament about the tactical setup in the friendlies like months and months back, and then as the tournament went on, kind of that seemed to simmer. So it'll be very interesting to see what the fallout is in Belgium when they start analysing. Did you use this very creative, aggressive, attacking player in the most obvious role, or maybe you could have put him alongside Eden Hazard?
I wonder when you go
Lukaku.
from the intensity of Guardiola to Roberto Martinez, does something just switch off in you slightly? He wasn't as disciplined, particularly and I know they came back and they beat Japan, but I just remember time and time again, he was dropping back in between the two centre halves. He was 80, 90 yards away from the opposition goal, just trying to run it all himself. Whereas I think if that was a Manchester City team, he wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
He would have kept his head, he would have kept his position. And then they switched him to the right. He's actually pretty versatile, and City do use him sort of out in the right wing at times, and he can do serious damage. It didn't feel as though Martinez knew what to do with him to get the very best out of him.
I think it's a good point. I don't think Martinez is going to be the guy who's really going to inspire you when you've left a title-winning Etihad Stadium setup and Pep there pretty much laying out exactly what he wants from you, and then it's Roberto Martinez who's maybe just a little less on the detail, and you look at Thierry Henry there and you're just
I'd say Roberto Martinez is good on detail, just his detail is bullshit.
Do you know what I would watch? I would watch a Zidane with Mogwai soundtrack style video of Guardiola on the sideline and the level of instruction he's giving his players during a game and what he wants from them.
That's the most hipsterish thing you've ever said.
It's way over my head. What was the name of the band?
Did you ever watch the Zidane documentary?
No.
Where they have about 30 cameras just focusing in on Zidane for the full 90 minutes of the
player
game.
cam. It's a 90 minute
Player
film
cam,
of-
and it's got a
Oh, sorry. No, I have
Mogwai
seen bits of that.
soundtrack.
Yeah. But the soundtrack.
An hour
was
in
over my
it
head.
starts getting a little bit dull, you
I'd
gotta
say,
say.
is it any good? I mean, I've never sat through the whole thing.
I did watch it when it first came out as a sort of, I've got to. It's like listening to Kid A for the first time, thinking I have to sit through it and appreciate this, otherwise I don't get this sport. An hour in, you're like, if only you could go back in time, put 20 cameras into Zidane's best ever performance.
Yeah, well, that would be the thing, wouldn't it? Rather than this kind of, because it was just a random run-of-the-mill league game. That was the issue there. Okay, so Kante, Blaise Matuidi and Luka Modric are our three men in midfield. Dave,
Yeah.
give us I guess it's the team in the World Cup. Fair enough.
Yeah.
It's the players who've performed.
I'm not going to go with
As
the guy.
opposed to what?
I'm leaving it the man who's probably going to win the Golden Boot, Harry Kane. I just thought 3 of his 6 goals were pens. Hat-trick against Panama, up there with the worst teams ever to play in the World Cup.
Yeah, come on.
And he was really poor against Croatia. A couple of chances at his best last season. He was
He's
taken.
injured. It
Well, I
emerged
don't
afterwards.
know. We don't know whether he was or not. No word to that effect has left the camp since then, so we can only speculate that he was fit. And particularly the header that just glanced off his forehead in the second half, should have scored it. So for that reason, he's not on the team. The obvious one is Mbappe, so I'll get him out of the way first. He's got 3 goals, but he's been responsible for a couple more as well. The one doubt I had over him coming into the tournament would be, what if he's like Michael Owen when he's 22 and that unbelievable lightning acceleration is gone for some reason? What have you left? And then you see that roll and the back heel ball into Giroud and you're thinking, he's going to be all right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't worry about that. So he's clearly got all the skills in his locker as well. He's got a good head and his shoulders, still just 19. So, I mean, look, he has to be in the team. If he gets a hat-trick this weekend, he could easily join Kane on 6 goals, hat-trick in a World Cup final.
Yeah, I wouldn't have had Harry Kane there. Harry Kane's a strange player in that his record of goals is just ridiculously good. Is it 4 seasons in a row in the Premier League he's scored more than 20? Don't watch him that often and go, man of the match. he just scores goals. He has games like he had against Croatia. Generally, though, you would back him to take the chances.
Yeah.
They definitely struggled because of the Henderson issue.
Henderson being not very good at football.
Well,
Henderson's good at
not a progressive player.
No, that's
Not good at the footballing aspects of football that involve.
No, he does a
passing
job.
the ball to your teammates, shooting.
At the rarefied level of a World Cup semi-final, you can't really have him as the only guy in that position. And secondly, at that level, you can't have supposedly one of the best strikers in the world, most people's top 4 now, missing those kind of chances. Ronaldo scores that header, and England win the game. Or there was 1-1 at the time, wasn't it? And that's just the difference. And Kane didn't score the header, so he doesn't get in. I'm interested to get your third.
I don't think Mbappe is faultless just yet. I don't think he's reached that level.
Oh no, he's 19.
But so hang on, Harry Kane's not getting in because he missed a header. Mbappe will have misses. Mbappe's getting in because of the drag back and the
no, but he's involved in the game all the time.
The penalty he won against Argentina. Now I know it was ridiculously stupid stuff from Marcus Rojo to push him
inside
over,
his own half,
and then his touch actually does let him down, and Rojo just had to shepherd him towards the end line. But he's a bit of a gobshite, and he just pushes him over. But
that 15-minute spell against Argentina was a proper holy shit moment.
Yeah.
So he's in there. I'll give you the last word, Nathan. So before we get to your attacker, Denis Kereshev, I didn't even know this guy existed before the tournament, to be perfectly honest, because he's been playing his club football with the second team in Real Madrid and on loan spell of Valencia, and then he was playing in Villarreal. I have never covered them in the Europa League over the last couple of years. 4 goals in 5 games from a guy that has never scored more than 7 in a league season at any club he's ever been at. He had 2 Man of the Match awards, and the goal against Croatia is one of the standout moments of the World Cup that we'll all remember. Just a brilliant strike, curled into the top corner. It meant so much at the time. A bit of a nomad and a bit of a nobody, but Kereshev is getting into my team.
Yeah, Kereshev was the only reason he ever stood out to me was because from 2 or 3 years back, when Russia decided they wanted all their players back in Russia, he was the only one who didn't come back, and for a long period he didn't want to play for Russia. He wanted to play for Spain. He grew up in Spain, even though his father played for Russia, and he was around Real Madrid, so you assumed there was talent there, and he was still in Villarreal. And I was surprised then, first time out, similar, not knowing probably enough about the Russian team as to why he didn't start in the opening game against Saudi Arabia. But
they came off the bench and one of the Man of the Match awards. He hadn't played for Russia for 2 years before the end of March of this year. So he really has almost literally come from nowhere to be a real star at the World Cup. And that goal, it just felt like the whole world had just like exploded when that goal goes in. I can only imagine what it was like to be in the stadium when that hits the back of the net. The roof would nearly come off the place. Yeah. Amazing.
The final selection then of our front 3, Eden Hazard, who I think against Brazil had probably his best performance in the last couple of years. Selfless, got involved, skipped past players, brought the best out of everybody around him, and I thought in the semi-final did something similar, just unfortunately wasn't quite good enough.
You felt like it could have been Eden Hazard's tournament in the way that 86 was Maradona's before that semi-final, and they almost got there, but they're just not good enough. Like he was good enough to be at that level, but the supporting cast was just too low.
I don't know. Belgium is a strange team in that Courtois is one of the best keepers in the Premier League. Alderweireld is the best defender in the Premier League. Meunier could be the best right back in the world. They have Kevin De Bruyne, Eden Hazard, Romelu Lukaku.
Yeah.
It's a serious...
Okay, but they didn't play well enough. It's a great team, but they just didn't...
I still look at Hazard and wonder if Jose Mourinho has killed something inside of him.
But surely his World Cup was good enough to say, no, he survived. He's okay again.
He was at his best at times in this World Cup.
I still think there could be another level if he just had a bit more... I think he's too disciplined at times.
He needs to get to Real Madrid.
He just needs to let loose and go, whereas too often you see him cut inside and take the easy ball back to Witsel.
Hazard and Mbappe as a duo at Real Madrid, that'd be pretty good. Screw
Gareth
Neymar.
Bale's come off the bench.
No, he's going to go to Man United.
The fact is, when you look at this 11, if you're actually somehow in a bizarre parallel universe go out and play with this 11, Kereshev is your striker.
It's quite a balanced 11.
It's purely based on World Cup performances. He is not the best 9 in the world.
There were obviously Ronaldo, based on the performance against Spain alone, was probably the standout moment of the competition.
Haven't even mentioned Neymar.
yeah.
Possibly because he's just such a whiny little moaner that he hasn't. I wouldn't even want him in any World Cup 11 of mine.
He's not close to this team at the moment. Like,
No.
Well, the guy he'd be in ahead of would be Hazard if he'd played better than Eden Hazard, which he clearly hasn't.
Does he cop on after this?
no, sure.
think so.
Everybody tells him he's amazing. Everybody says, "Oh, you were robbed."
He lives in an echo chamber.
You did exactly the right thing. Dave, you've got to go. Thanks very much.
I gotta go,
Yeah.
but I've thoroughly enjoyed this. Is there anybody really that's? If we could hear our listeners roaring at the radio or roaring at their TVs right now,
Well, the Spurs fans are all going, "Oh, what more is Harry Kane supposed to do?" Eden Hazard did, of course, 6 goals.
and everybody in Letterfrack as well, of course.
Yeah, did you see did you see the report from Letterfrack?
I didn't watch the report. No.
Did you read the comments underneath?
I read
it?
the comments, but
The comments underneath.
I don't know if you
Priceless.
recognize. I don't know if you read the comments under your show every morning, Ger, but people aren't always particularly kind online.
No, they're not. I don't. Obviously. I don't obviously. Well, most of them we see most of them, but they're not like one of them was about like an arsehole unclenched from the cringing because it was so cringy. I'm like, is it that cringy?
I didn't realise Harry Kane had such a strong connection
Well,
with Letterfrack because I did speak to Harry Kane before he was proper big time about the whole Ireland thing, and it was
you dropped a name there. Nathan.
his
You can pick it up
his
afterwards.
line was I'm 100% British, and I asked something about was it your dad's from Galway, and there was no there was no yes 100%. I love going west, and it's a real part of my childhood I'll never forget.
Yeah.
It was
His dad had been there in May.
well, that's enough.
That was
Shit.
Bloody hell.
on that note. McIntyre is out, but we're going to actually preview the game. What's going to happen in the World Cup final? So, Nathan, you can just slide down underneath that, Dave. No, you're going to walk in front of the camera, good man. You'd swear he's never been on TV. So, who is going to win?
Thanks, lads.
Okay, your mic is still live.
That could have been
Still.
that could have been the best radio.
/ internet TV.
That's why. Have you seen the Jinx?
Yes, and it started again last night on
Okay, so I won't.
Sky Atlantic.
I won't ruin it.
If you haven't seen it, but there's a brilliant live hot mic where he confesses to the murders at the end of it. It's a joke. He doesn't. So who's going to win? And how do Croatia stop France from winning?
Win midfield, somehow ensure that Modric totally controls this game. The one thing Croatia have shown is that they can work teams out. So England started with a blistering pace. I don't want to say Modric was been bypassed, but he certainly wasn't totally in control of the game. It felt as though England were getting it from back to front really quickly. Stones and Maguire were on the ball. They were bypassing Henderson. They were getting it through to Ali. They were getting it through to Kane. And Modric was chasing shadows a bit. But then he figured it out.
How?
So either he figured it out, and we spoke about this with John Giles last night, whether he figures it out during the game and then goes in at half-time and says, well, actually, lads, here's exactly what's happening. Or the coach figured it out.
Did England not just also set back a little bit because they were in the lead?
There was probably a bit of that as well. But also, I think if England had had that sort of experience of playing in Champions League finals and winning them, that you work out when your period is going to come.
Yeah.
But France have just too much. So if Pogba is disciplined and Kante is on his game, they'll match Rakitic and Modric. And you look at everybody else, and France have it. The only question mark about France is Giroud, who's had a quiet tournament.
Ultra quiet tournament.
An ultra
0
quiet
goals.
tournament. A final is the type of thing you would imagine would suit him, where it's one set piece, it's one header.
Yeah.
You-
They've got
what
a track
you want
record of winning a World Cup with a shitty striker, though, so it's okay.
He's better than Stefan
Is he
Guivarc'h.
better than Stefan Guivarc'h? Is he?
He certainly, I
I
think.
mean, he's got a
he
better
is.
Premier League career than Stefan
Well,
Guivarc'h,
exactly.
but not
That's ultimately in football, that's all that matters, Jared.
does he have a better international career? I don't know. Was Guivarc'h not like the hot number one kid on the block heading into that World Cup? And
It doesn't feel as though, even though France are strong favourites, that there's this overwhelming pressure on them that they're going to fold, that this golden generation of French
well, they
players
folded
can
at
their
home
hackers.
in the Euros, and you have to assume that they've learned. You don't have to assume. They clearly appear to be a better team because they have Mbappe in it. Like, Griezmann hasn't been as good in this competition. So Griezmann wasn't even in the conversation here. Nobody went, oh, you're missing Griezmann. But, like, you know, he made a movie about staying at his own club. That guy thinks he's one of the best players in the world, and he's supposed to be performing at that level. But I don't know. I think that most of it comes down to the fact that several key players are playing well, as it always does in this, and that's Mbappe, that's Kante, and that's Pogba. Whereas in the Euros, they were fits and starts, and they definitely had that pressure of a country that had been suffering from terrorism really badly over the previous 8 months. There had been masses of hysteria and incidents and fear, and they were supposed to be trying to unify this country which is fractured. Here it's like they're on holidays for a month with their mates playing football. It's a completely different aspect to it, I think.
Yeah, and it does feel maybe they're not a great team just yet, but they're still a very young team, and maybe it's that they're very much a reflection of Deschamps in that he's made them steady. He's let Mbappe have his moments, but by and large they work their asses off.
Yeah,
but successful. Maybe he wins the World Cup, he steps aside, and then in 2 years' time,
Wenger.
at Euro 2020, and it's the most attacking team we've ever seen, and he let loose, and they can still win with that. But Deschamps obviously realised that unless he can control these guys, it's the only way. I'm not fully convinced by the two full-backs, or certainly not the right back. I think maybe there's an opportunity there to get a Pavard, as they got a Trippier in the second half for Croatia. Mandzukic, he's wily. He's played in these games.
well, he has. He scored amazing goals in these games.
Yeah, but if you think back to the goal against Real Madrid for Juventus, it's just hard to make a case for Croatia, considering 3 games in a row that have gone to extra time. It's not like they're going into this where they can overrun France, where they've got all that extra energy. You just hope they get a goal, that they're the team that goes in front, and it asks the question. My fear would be that it's a 2-0 win to France, and it's actually quite comfortable.
Yeah, there's definitely a strong chance of that happening, right?
You'd have to imagine so. That France have looked comfortable throughout this.
Is Benjamin Mendy in the team if he's fit all year and playing football?
I would suspect so. Now, Lucas Hernandez was obviously in that team there and has done brilliantly, and has been brought up in a Atletico Madrid dressing room where you defend first and worry later about what else is expected from your game, whereas Mendy's hasn't played any football really for the last year. I would have thought 12 months ago Sidibe and Mendy will be the best full-backs, will be up there with Dani Alves and Marcelo in this competition. He's gone with something very different. He's obviously decided again not to take that risk. If Mendy was fit, he's up there with the best left backs in the world, but he's a very different defender. So maybe if he's fit, maybe the team changes and the team shape changes completely.
And Sidibe's not close to getting in ahead of Pavard?
He's obviously seen something in Pavard that he likes, because as Dave said, he's come from nowhere. He's playing centre back for Stuttgart. He's not as if he's been at one of the big teams where he's playing Champions League football, where he's proven himself at the highest level. He's obviously someone who can follow the orders of his manager.
Yeah.
So he's done a job there. You would like to see, and again, I think that maybe is the next step of, right now we don't look at this French team as a great French side, but maybe they win this World Cup and then another manager comes in and he lets them flourish, and that's where the greatness comes through.
Yeah. France to win in normal time?
France to win 2-0.
2-0. Clear cut, no.
The other great thing about a World Cup final is, so we say Mbappe is brilliant right now. What if he goes out there and he scores a hat-trick?
Yeah.
Like, this is the birth of a genius, if that happens. And that can happen.
It's his tournament if that happens, yeah. But also what could happen is that the best player on their team headbutts somebody and gets sent off, and suddenly we're looking at a situation where the team that no one really thinks is going to win this is going home with the cup.
Our Galway scored 2 goals in the first 10 minutes against Kerry, and suddenly you find yourself unable to turn it off.
And nobody watches that. All right, Nathan, good stuff. Thanks very much for that. Thanks to Dave as well. We are going to take a quick break. We'll be back after these.